All right, my Bible in 365 brothers and sisters, we are at the Apostle Paul's very short letter to a very wealthy man by the name of Philemon. Now, if you don't know the story of Philemon, I can tell you this, it's a remarkable one. Quite frankly, there's a lot about Philemon that we don't know. Much of what we do know concerning Philemon comes to us from Acts chapter 19, especially knowing and understanding what he was, who he was. He was a very godly man. He was a man that Paul very much respected. And of course, this is really, really critical to know and understand, because when you develop an awareness of what the Apostle Paul is trying to do in this letter, as he writes to Philemon, it is something that is extraordinary. Now, why is it extraordinary? Because in summary, what's happening is Paul is writing a letter to Philemon concerning a runaway slave. Now, you need to know this. A slave that runs away during this time is sentenciable by death. Okay, typically that's the way you dealt with a runaway slave. Now, in some cases, especially in this portion of Asia Minor, there were other ways to deal with this, but oftentimes they were very limited in nature because people in that area and during that time, even in this modern day, don't like the reputation being able to be developed of a country that does not deal harshly with the slave that chooses to run away. So back then, it was a very rare thing when their lives would be spared. But in this particular situation, something remarkable happens. Onesimus runs away from Philemon. Philemon was actually a godly man, very likely treated his slaves very, very well. And typically when we talk about slaves, they are more like employees, especially in those days. Although, anyway, there's a lot to say about that. There's a whole big word on modern slavery nowadays. But the one thing that I will say concerning this is when Onesimus left, one of the things that happened, or when he ran away, one of the things that happened is it left a very bad taste in Philemon's mouth. And we know that because the one thing that we have to recognize is that when something like this takes place, there's no way in the world somebody in Philemon's position is going to be okay with it or it's going to sit well with him. But something happens where Onesimus comes to know the Lord. He starts walking with the Lord and he begins to be discipled by the same man that discipled Philemon. Now, what has to be understood about this is the Apostle Paul recognized something so extraordinary in Onesimus that he knew Onesimus going back to Philemon and serving with him would be something that God would use and God would be glorified in. And what is perhaps one of the most insightful and powerful pictures that you will be able to draw from this is what happens when a man opens up his heart while filled with the Spirit of God to receive people that have done them wrong. Folks, I got to tell you this. One of the things that the Apostle Paul tells Philemon here is he says, I would order you to take this guy back with my spiritual authority, but I'm not doing that. I'm actually appealing to you to accept him on your own because I want you to experience the spiritual reward that will come from it. Folks, there are things that we do on a day-to-day basis that go contrary to our flesh. There's things that we do on a day-to-day basis that we just don't feel good about on the inside. But it isn't because the Spirit of God is warning us. It's because our flesh doesn't like it. And when we choose to walk contrary to the flesh, in obedience to the Spirit of God who lives inside of us, although we are off-putting for just a short time, the gratification that comes from the flesh in the immediate moment, we are providing for ourselves so much more reward for the future, the type of reward that cannot be taken away, the type of reward that cannot be mitigated or ripped off. And folks, this is what you need to get out of this book. This is really important. Please, please, please. You need to understand that this book teaches you how to find great blessing in doing the things that are contrary to that which the natural flesh wants to do, the evil, sinful flesh. There is a function of discipline that's learned here that will cause your eyes to open and for your life to be changed. I think there's something really critical. And there's something spectacular when you hear the Apostle Paul say words like, welcome this runaway slave like you would welcome me. That's heavy. And there's a lot to be said about it. Now, I will tell you this. This is a homework assignment. Philemon is a very short letter. There's only one chapter. But the one thing that I will ask you to do is to go to jamescadiz.com and listen to my most recent studies through the book of Philemon. I can promise you it will be life-changing. Now, with that said, we are near the end of October. Wonderful things are coming up in this season. We know that we're in the last days. We know that Christ could come back at any moment. And more than ever, we have to fight the good fight. I keep saying this. Please go to people. Ask them to vote. Ask them to get involved in the political arena. Ask them to be faithful to God in being a good steward with the republic that's been entrusted to us. And make sure whatever you do, you stay in prayer every day leading up to the election. Stay in prayer for our nation. And whatever you do, make sure you maximize every moment you have, that you learn how to walk closer with the Lord as you get into his word. And one last thing. I'm proud of you. Great job. You're almost there. You guys are awesome. You continue to inspire me. I know you continue to inspire the Kirk family, and you continue to inspire the people at Calvary Chapel, Signal Hill. So keep fighting the good fight. Do the right thing. Seek the Lord. Put him first. And get into the word. Love you guys. God bless you. And by the way, Christ will come at any moment. So look up.